Welcome to the Unofficial Steelers Podcast, the podcast so unofficial it doesn't have a home. Here's your host, from In Hindsight, Nathan Heintz. From Steelers Nation Australia, Mark Davison. And from State of the Steelers, Daniel J. Here we go.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to State of the Steelers. Welcome back to the Unofficial Steelers Podcast. Today is the pre-draft show. I am joined by Nathan Heintz, as always, from In Hindsight. Nathan, how are you doing today?
Daniel, we're not doing too bad, man. I'm honestly dreading about refereeing today. But other than that, it's honestly a good day to be a Pirate fan. It's a good month to be a Pirate fan. And it's been a long time coming, but this isn't what the episode's going to be about. But I just want to throw that out there. I will be making a video talking about it. So I'm my spirits are lifted a little higher with what they've done today.
That is awesome, man. That's awesome. I don't follow baseball too crazily, so I might be tuning in just to see what the great news is and things of that nature. But a little bit of house cleaning. The Pittsburgh Steelers made a move yesterday, signing Miles Boykin to a 1-year contract, a 1-year prove-it deal. What are your thoughts initially on that? And then I'll give mine.
Hello, Jennifer. Hello, Afton. Hello. Appreciate you guys tuning in to the show. Miles Boykin, I think it's just something of, hey, they need some special team help, man. And he's a guy that can play a critical role there. He's going to bring some depth to the wide receiver room. It's always a good thing to have depth at that position. So I think it's just good. 1-year contract. There's a couple guys that were some special teams guys for them that won't be there this year. They're bringing a guy like him back who can add to that and just to help add a little bit to the rest of their depth and for the receivers. So I'm fine with it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's kind of my point as well. I thought he did fantastic last season in special teams. His ability to track down the ball carrier and make the tackle and be sure-handed in that instance definitely, carved out a role for him on this team. When you look at somebody like Benny Snell, who's carved out a role in the past because of his special teams ability and the fact that he's probably moving on. I don't think he signed anywhere else yet, right?
No, he has not.
But I don't, when it comes to the third running back on the depth chart for the Pittsburgh Steelers, that running back is probably the best running back that can tackle because they're going to see a lot of special teams. Yeah. So tackling and blocking is probably where it's at for those guys. So getting Miles Boykin, I thought that was important. I think he was an upgrade than a Benny Snell on the special teams. He was able to get down there. He's a little bit quicker, things of that nature. So seeing him come back, that's a good move for the Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers also made a trade a little while ago. They ended up getting Robinson from the Los Angeles Rams. This is a guy, well, in my opinion, Omar Khan, the Khan artist, does it again. Gets a high value player for a steal, in my opinion. They swap 7th-round picks and only have to carry on $5 million of his contract. And better yet, if he ends up flopping or not being to the best of the, what the Steelers are hoping, they can cut him at the end of the season and not owe him anything going forward. What are your thoughts on the Allen on the trade there?
Well, Daniel, have I not been saying this? Have I not been saying this all offseason? That they needed to go out and get a veteran guy to bring some leadership to the group, which he does. And a guy that doesn't need to be the top receiver, a guy that doesn't need the ball all the time. He's going to play a little bit of probably both areas on as a receiver, inside, outside a little bit. And they didn't really give up anything for him. So honestly, you look at anyone that was crapping on the trade, what's there to crap on, dude? They didn't give up anything. They're not paying his full salary. And they have a situation where if he excels here and they like what he did, he can come back next year. If not, then okay. Then they can cut their ties and stuff like that. But it's definitely an upgrade over what they had for sure going into the offseason. And for me, my ideal guy was a guy like that. Now, I didn't know that they were going to I never really put in the factor of them trading for somebody. You can't really necessarily do that. But when it happened, I was just like, dude, this is what needed to happen. And I think most fans are pretty pleased with it. Allen Robinson hasn't really been the guy the last couple years or so that he was in 2020. He had a really good season with Chicago that year, but he also hasn't really had that good of a he hasn't really had much of a quarterback either throughout the last couple years. And it's going to bring not just like, okay, it's another weapon for Kenny, but it's going to open the field more. It's going to bring a little bit in the sense of who you have behind your top two and somebody who's proven. Now, Brian asked, why doesn't anyone consider DJ a veteran wide receiver? I mean, he kind of is a little bit, like he's been in the league 4 or 5 years or so, but DJ doesn't really have quite that leadership, man. And that's what the Steelers wide receiver room needed. Allen Robinson brings leadership. He's a good locker room guy. Anyone that he's been teammates with, man, will speak highly of the guy. Deontay Johnson isn't really viewed as the guy that can really take the wide receiver room and solidify him, not in the sense of play style, but in the sense of growing up, in the sense of looking out for the locker room, looking out for those guys, looking out for that group of guys. I like Deontay a lot. I think that they should keep him. I've never been on the trade Deontay bandwagon, but Allen Robinson's been in the league since 2015. So he's been in the league a lot longer than Deontay Johnson has, and anyone that he's played with has nothing but good things to say about him. That's what the Steelers want. They want high-quality guys.
Right, true. And I don't think punching your quarterback in the face during halftime is a good sign of leadership either.
Just
because you're not getting the ball, and when you are getting the ball, your toes out of bounds or it's going through your hands.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like Deontay's not a leader. He's not. Deontay wants the ball, which is understandable. Deontay, I think, is a good player. I think he's a good receiver, but yeah, like that's what exactly like Jared Edwards says. He's a veteran guy. He's been in the league around 5 years or so. But they need that guy to hold firm in that wide receiver group, man. Because George Pickens, we know that he's got a little bit of attitude on him. We know he can get a little crazy here and there and stuff like that. And they needed somebody to really kind of be a guy to come in who's been in the league for a while, be a little bit of a role model. That's what you need. And sometimes that can sound cliche, but it goes a long way. It really does. I don't care what anybody says. Bringing in veteran presence, veteran experience, it goes a long way.
I agree 100%. And I think this was a good move for the Steelers. They feel that he has a lot more in the tank. I do too. He's been kind of plagued with some injuries. A lot of people have said that maybe perhaps the fit wasn't there with Los Angeles. Maybe perhaps he can find a niche role with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've, in a press conference with Omar Khan and Tomlin, they kind of asked him where they see him at, what is going to be his role. And he said he can play on the outside, and he's big enough to play on the inside and take the hits over the middle. But he is going to be taking the ball away from somebody. Who do you see is getting less targets now that Allen Robinson is on the team? Is it a Deontay Johnson, or is it a Calvin Austin? Who do you think is going to end up losing some passes towards their direction?
It's a good question. I see it more being like anybody, whether they draft one still in the middle of the rounds, which I still think is possible. Like, I still think they could draft a receiver in like the 4th round if there's somebody there they like a lot. Calvin Austin, no one really knows about. He missed all last year, as we know. It's still kind of up in the air how they would use him and really what he can bring to the table. So I don't think that he's going to take away things from Johnson, especially Pickens, not at all. But I think really anybody that was kind of creeping their way up more so into that 3rd role, yeah, I think that's kind of more so how I see it. So who's ever really there behind him, if they draft anybody, bring anybody in, Robinson's going to get the snaps over those guys, 100%.
For sure. I mean, all they had to do is
we should.
If they would have kept Mitch Trubisky as quarterback and Anthony Miller and Robinson, I think we have the 2018 Bears.
Yeah, we have the Bears all over again, don't we?
It's pretty crazy, man. Yeah. But even with all these moves at the wide receiver position, signing Boykin, trading for Robinson, The Steelers are getting mocked, still picking a receiver at number 17. Peter King just came out with his mock, basically indicating that they're going to be taking Ohio State's, what's his name?
Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Jackson Smith. Yes, there you go. I always messed up his name.
His
Jackson
brother
Smith
plays for the Pirates.
Correct. He's a rookie this year, ain't he?
Yeah, this is his first really kind of full season up. Yeah, he's one of the outfielders on the team.
So this receiver here in Jackson Smith is a guy that a lot of folks had looked at as probably being the best receiver in the class. He's known as a guy that is in the books, in the playbook, understands the playbook, very smart and intelligent person. Could be day one wide receiver number one. Do you see the Steelers going wide receiver early? And if they do, does that mean that, that's probably the end for Deontay Johnson at the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Well, if they would, I wouldn't say it'd be the end for him this year, but I think in terms of the future, yeah. But there's no way. There's a 0% chance they take a wide receiver in the first round. I don't care what any of these says. Think about it. Mel Kiper is the other one that had them taking Zay Flowers at pick 17. Mel Kiper was the guy when Carolina took Jimmy Clausen back in 2010, 2009, whatever freaking year it was, 2011. He said, his words, not mine. He said, if Jimmy Clausen does not turn out to be a franchise quarterback, I'm quitting my job. And Jimmy Clausen was a failure. So when it comes to these mock drafts, you have to take them with such a slight grain of salt, dude, because every year they're always wrong. They're always wrong. Especially kind of the unpredictable teams are always wrong. Now they can get right some of the more obvious picks, but they're 95% of the time. Like nobody has ever had a perfect first round mock draft. It's like March Madness. Nobody's ever had a perfect bracket. So 0% chance they take a wide receiver at 17, nor should they. I think when you look what they've done this offseason, I think tackle's their highest priority right now. I really do. From what Omar Khan has said yesterday, they think there's a lot of depth at cornerback in this draft. And when you look at what they've done with the offensive line, they've been heavily referred to as a team possibly trading up for one of the top tackles in the draft. There's guys they like. They've met with a handful of them. I think tackle is going to be the way they go in the first round, whether they trade up or stay at 17. I do.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that there's a high possibility in that as well. You see all the draft, pre-draft visits that the Steelers have gotten from offensive tackle. They've done their due diligence on it. And I think you're correct there. I think that that's possibly going to be the angle that they go unless those top, tackles get taken before they choose. And then I think that if that ends up being the case, then the cornerbacks are probably going to fall. And then the Steelers will probably get their hands on one of those. And when you look at the defense, the Steelers have lost Cam Sutton this year. They replaced him with Patrick Peterson, who's on the wrong side of 30, says he still has a couple of years in his game, played fairly well last season, had multiple picks for Minnesota. And so he really didn't have too much of a drop off now. He'll be the first to admit that he doesn't have that 4.3 speed that he had coming into the league. And so out of LSU. And so the Steelers getting a guy to go under his wing doesn't necessarily mean that guy has to start right now. Also, the Pittsburgh Steelers have talked about utilizing Patrick Peterson at the safety role. And, that, in my opinion, allows for a young cornerback to learn the defense in pieces and in certain parts and only be implemented during and while Patrick Peterson is in that safety look, which is probably in some obvious passing situations, third and long, things of that nature. That'll really help out a young guy, necessarily meaning that you don't need to go up and draft one early. So if the Steelers are going to have to move up to get one of these tackles, which tackle do you think they're going up to get?
Good question. So you got three tackles right now that are going to be solidified going in the top 20. You got Paris Johnson, who's the number one guy from Ohio State. Broderick Jones probably is right behind him from Georgia. And then you got Darnell Wright, who's I'd say is right behind him. Or from Tennessee, right behind Broderick Jones. Now, Darnell Wright is a guy that I've seen a lot of people this week mock to the Steelers. He plays right tackle. And last year at Tennessee, was really his breakout season at that side. So I don't know if they would want to keep him there or if they would try to switch him, if they would move Okorafor to left. I really don't know. But I think if they would trade up, to answer your question, I think it would be for Paris Johnson from Ohio State. I really do. I don't see them trading up for Darnell Wright or Broderick Jones. I don't, just because those guys have the more possibility to fall to them at 17 than Paris Johnson does. Paris Johnson will go somewhere probably between pick 7 and pick 11. Probably somewhere between there. So I think that'd be the guy. But if they would get Broderick Jones at 17, if they would get Darnell Wright from Tennessee at 17, I think that really everybody should be happy with that, because those are both guys as well that can be a high-end starter for you for quite a while. Regional, what's up, man? What's up from Tennessee?
How's it going?
Yeah, so in that instance, that's the only guy I see them trading up for. Now, this draft this year is so unpredictable. Like, this is probably the first draft in a little bit that I can say is very unpredictable. Like, the number 1 pick, you have Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. For whatever reason, Will Levis's odds of going number 1 have risen. I'm not sure why. So there's really even no solidification on who's going number 1.
Right.
With these quarterbacks.
Well, I think with CJ Stroud, it was his cognitive testing that has kind of dropped him from being in that area.
Right. So you have a team like the Texans at 2. You have a team, if there's another team that wants to jump up with the Cardinals at 3, like Tennessee could. Minnesota, for whatever reasons, had traction in trading up. Texans also have the 12th pick if they want to trade up and use that as well. There's Indianapolis as well, or Seattle at 5. Like, there's so many different scenarios that can happen where in some recent drafts, you already kind of have an idea on how at least most of the top 5 is going to go. This year, I really can't tell you. Like, I really have no idea who's going to go where or anything like that. So your guess, anybody's guess, is really as good as mine at the end of the day. So it might work in the Steelers' favor in the sense of, let's say they don't trade up. It might work in their favor of seeing a couple, like 2 of the corners and maybe 1 of the 3 tackles dropping to their pick. And then it's like, okay, what direction do they want to go? Is there a corner here that they think that, okay, they can't get in the second round? Or is there a tackle here that's, hey, we can't miss Broderick Jones. We can't miss Darnell Wright. We got to get these guys. So rather with the cornerbacks, there's a lot of depth at corner, especially in the second round. Like, you can get some corners in the second round that can be starters for you. Now, does that mean that they're going to be guys that are going to start right away? Not necessarily, but they're guys that at least have a lot of high upside and can be a starter, full on 17-game starter come year 2. So I don't know, Daniel. I really don't. I think it's unpredictable. I think with the Steelers, offensive tackle, cornerback has been the highest speculated position. But for the draft all around, this is what makes it that much more exciting.
No, I agree.
They might get an opportunity where they have 2-3 guys there at 17 if they don't trade up and say, okay, who do we like the best here? Who are we going to go with? What can we do at pick 32? Right. So
now, when it comes to the team, I think that the biggest hole is probably at this point. I think the Steelers have done an excellent job in free agency. They've been very aggressive, but one position that they haven't really acquired is the outside linebacker, the third outside linebacker position. I don't foresee them going outside linebacker or edge at 17, but maybe that's a possibility at 49 if somebody's there. Maybe even 32. We have a question from Brian Brown. He asks, do you guys like it better when you pretty much know, like Najee, or do you like it better when you have no idea?
Oh, dude, no idea is so much better, bro. No idea is so much better. When we look at the last 2-3 seasons, and Brian, you'll agree, everybody should agree in this chat. We look at the last 2-3 years, it's been pretty predictable who the Steelers were going to take. Last year, we knew it was going to be a quarterback. It was kind of a matter of who. We knew it was going to be Najee Harris. Now, with Devin Bush in 2019, I think most people had an inclination they were going to take up and trade for him. And then Terrell Edmonds was probably the last one that shocked everybody in 2018. Yeah. So it's been about five years or so where they've kind of had that unpredictability, but that's what makes it so much fun. Like I remember watching the NBA drafts back in the day. They don't do it anymore, thank God. But I remember watching the NBA drafts back in the day when I was a kid. There were times like they would show the player on the phone with the team who's going to pick them. It's like, dude, why are you showing that? Like you're freaking ruining it. Yeah. So when you don't have that, when you're a fan, especially with how the Steelers have kind of gone the last few years, as a fan, it makes it that much more exciting, especially when their selection's up. Like, all right, who are we taking? There's a few guys here that we could see them being interested in. They've been linked to. What are they going to do? So that what makes it a lot more fun. I'm sure, Daniel, you agree with that.
Oh, 100%. You know, I think it makes it easier to cover when you know who it is and you can do your due diligence on the player, like Najee Harris. You know, Kenny Pickett wasn't a guy that I thought the Steelers were going to go after. You know, I'll be honest, I didn't think that they were going to go after him. But I did do some due diligence on him and watch some of his tape and things of that nature because I knew that the position was going to be acquired. Mm-hmm. And with that being said, I knew that there's a possibility there could have been a run on quarterbacks. And I think even the Steelers said so as much, that they thought that there would have been a run on quarterbacks as there has been in years previous. And so, you know, when it came down to that pick, the Steelers had their choice of every quarterback. You know, at that point, I was happy with whoever it was going to be because I knew it was going to be the guy that the Steelers wanted. They weren't going to – it was never going to be that, you know, let's just say Kenny Pickett gets drafted earlier and then they go Desmond Ridder. Right. You know, there's never going to be that question like, well, was Desmond Ridder really the guy or was it Kenny Pickett? Right. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so – or even if somebody else would have been drafted prior to Kenny, let's just say Malik Willis would have gotten drafted by somebody prior to – and the Kenny Pickett would have been the Steelers guy no matter, you know, at that point, regardless, we wouldn't have known that. And that thought would always be, you know, in the back of Steeler Nation's mind. But yeah, for me, I like it when we don't know who it is. I like it when there's an option. I like it when, and the thing is with this case or in this situation, I'm sorry, you have a lot of rumors flying that the Steelers might be moving up. They might be moving back. They might be staying put. They might be moving the 32nd pick. Yeah. That makes the entire draft extremely interesting.
Oh, it does.
You never know if they're going to move back into the first, maybe pawn that 32nd, maybe that 49th to go back into the first so they can get somebody and have that fifth-year option. You don't know if when it comes down to that 32nd pick that they move back a little bit and acquire some,
they could,
you know, fifth and sixth round picks.
Yeah, they don't have those picks.
And so those things are, you know, I probably will predict, and I'll say that there's probably about a 90% chance that the Steelers will have a fifth round or a sixth round. I don't know if they'll have both. But I do think that some moves will be done, and that by the time that the draft starts, that they will have a fifth or sixth round pick. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a lot more likely they trade that 32nd pick to get some more picks. Tomlin said yesterday too that they're expecting a lot of calls for that 32nd pick, and it's honestly such a high luxury. So that's what makes it. That's even more of the unpredictability factor in the draft. And that's why every Steeler fan needs to be watching, not just for their first round pick. Watch the second and third rounds. Those are key rounds for really any team. So that's what makes it even more fun. Regional says, do they like DeJuan Jones? They met with him. Yeah, they met with him in the pre-draft process. I'm not sure how much they like him or don't like him. He played right tackle at Ohio State last year. So not really sure. I think DeJuan Jones is a guy that's probably looking early second round, at least from what I've been seeing. But there could be a team, I think maybe late in the first round, if they like him a lot, they could take him. So it's possible. Julius Brents Afton is a guy as well that's been gaining a lot of traction. He's a guy that's always on the ball. So Devin, what's up, man? Appreciate you tuning in.
What's going on?
How's your show been going, bro? Love to have you back on the channel at some point, man. So, guy like Julius Brents, I've been seeing some people have him at 17. I'm like, that's too much of a reach for him. It's too much of a reach for him. I think maybe more so early second round is where that guy's going to go. But he's always on the ball though. I like him too.
As far as DeJuan Jones though, I saw some speculation and rumors out there that the Steelers weren't too pleased with him because he didn't participate in his pro day. I think he only did some things at the combine, didn't really participate there either. I think he went into the Senior Bowl, had a great practice, one practice, and then said, all right, I'm a top 10 pick, basically.
Yeah, you're not going top 10. Not even close.
I don't need to do anything. Now, do you think that if the Steelers don't go tackle, because let's just say there's a run on tackles early on, Dwan Jones, in my opinion, I think he's more of a right tackle than a left tackle. He's quite large.
He is. It's not to say he can't transition either. Like, I never like to say rookies can't do this, they can't do that. Like, I never cut rookies off on anything. But in terms of what he's done, yeah, it kind of seems like so.
Yeah, and I just think that if he does get selected, he would definitely be maybe the 32nd pick that the Steelers would go with. And I think he would be put in for that right tackle position, and then Cheeks Okorafor and Dan Moore would be battling out for the left tackle position.
Yeah.
When it comes to tackles, when it comes to offensive linemen, period, Ramon Foster had came out here recently on his show, and he was talking about how it took him about 2-3 years for him to get the hang of his position and get going. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. Dan Moore is going into his third season. He had a little bit of a sophomore slump because he didn't make that huge step that everybody anticipated he would make in that second year. But he's a young player. He still has a lot of game under his belt. I think that he could be a guy that could be developed later on, or perhaps be that left tackle. Awesome, Devin. We definitely got to get you back on. I see that maybe, there's been some rumors about him just because of his size, and you see the kind of players that Andy Weidel had, gained from the Eagles, and now with like Herbig and Seumalo, these are all large people. And so it wouldn't go against what I think that the Steelers are trying to do by putting in a lot of beef up front. So I think there's a possibility there, but I think that possibility would have to come down to the rest of the tackles going earlier, in my opinion.
Yeah, it definitely would. It's just hard, man. Like, I've even seen people have Broderick Jones with Steelers at 17, and I'm like, there's no way I see that guy falling all the way to 17. I think that he's a really good guy, that has got a very high ceiling to be really anybody's left tackle for 10 plus years. I really do. So it's hard to, like, just with this year's draft, it's just so hard to, like, picture who's going to be there, who's not going to be there. Because when you look at, as I said earlier, I'm not going to rate her myself, but when you look at the fact that there's no consistency in the sense of who's even going to go in the top 5, like, that's all you got to know. That's all you got to know. So the Steelers, a couple guys they like that if they would want to trade up for, they might just be there. I really don't know. That's what makes it that much more predictable. Brian says, do you think Coach T was throwing the league a curveball praising this year's tight ends? I don't think so. I think that this tight end class is pretty top tier. If you ask me, I think all 3 of the top guys could be productive guys in this league. Yeah, Devin, we'll get you back on the show, man. Probably we can do something after the draft where you're on the show with Daniel and I on whosever channel we're doing it on, man. We can talk about the draft and what the Steelers did. So we'll reach out to you, man. So that'd be a lot of fun to do that, have you back on. So I don't know, dude. Even like them having 2 second-round picks, like, I can't even sit here and tell you what I think's even with that. Yeah, there he is. So yeah, he's in the chat. He's in the chat. So yeah, that's all you got to know. It's all you got to know. Even with our second round picks, if they keep 32 and they keep 49, if they don't trade it, you have corners. I've seen some people like a couple linebackers there for them in the second round, which I'm not really too keen on, like, early on, but it is what it is. You look at, if let's say they don't take a tackle at pick 17. You could have one at 32. There's a couple guys that could possibly be there. Defensive line is also, there's a couple guys as well. Pick 49. You have the Benton guy, I forget what college he went to. You have Ika from Baylor. Those are two guys that are probably going to be there at 49. Dexter from Florida. So those are some guys that the Steelers like them. There's a variety of positions. There really is. But all I'm going to say is wide receivers not getting taken in the first 3 rounds. I don't care what anybody says. I still see people say Jordan Addison at pick 32. First of all, Addison might not even last that long. Number 2, I don't know what the fascination is with him. He's not a can't-miss wide receiver. Can he be a solid player in the league? Sure, he can. But I don't understand the fascination. I don't. Do you? Do you get the fascination with wide receiver so early?
I don't get it, man, unless somebody knows something that we don't know. That, for instance, maybe the Steelers are shopping Deontay Johnson. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the only thing, but still at that point.
Yeah, even if they were to shop him and get something back for him, I think that the only way you do that is by taking a receiver in the first round and then selling him to a team that was hoping to get a receiver to recuperate some picks.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest.
Glasses, please. I mean, seriously.
Right. But when it comes to Addison, I don't think he's a guy that I would be excited about as far as like some of the other wide receivers.
No, I don't think that he's ultimately a game-changing draft pick. Now, let's say they would take him at some point. Sure, I'm going to root for the guy. I'm going to be excited, right? Hopefully that he would turn into a future piece. But, dude, it's a missed opportunity. It's a wasted pick, in my opinion, because there's so much other talent there, especially for positions that, man, you really could bolster even more than what you did in the offseason. Why does wide receiver need to be that? George Pickens is going to be your guy long term. Deontay, we don't know quite how long term he is, but I still think Deontay's a top 25 guy. I do. He had a down year last year. He did, but I still think that we see what he's capable of doing, and when he's capable of that, he's easily a guy that's a very productive receiver. Allen Robinson, will wait and see what he does. They drafted Calvin Austin, so I need to bring another guy in for.
Now, when it comes to Deontay Johnson, they got pick 32 for Chase Claypool.
Yeah.
You think they'd get something better for Deontay?
I don't think they'd get a first-round pick for him. No, I think the league would just look at the Bears' freaking incompetency on that. The Bears were just so freaking desperate, dude. See, that's what happens, dude, if you're like a franchise like that where you're trying to make something happen and you force it. And that's exactly what they did. That's exactly what they did. And they regret it. They regret it. So, hey, Steelers benefit. But when I still see things on Twitter from time to time about Steelers taking a receiver or Jordan Addison at pick 32 or heck, even 17 at this point, like it's just so foolish. It really is. Like it's such a small minority, but it makes zero sense. It does. You already have production there at wide receiver, and then you have Pat Freiermuth at tight end.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you need to bring another wide receiver in for?
No, I can agree. I mean, I do think that perhaps the Steelers still don't have wide receiver 1 on the team. You have a lot of wide receiver 2s.
Can possibly turn into that, and that's why you got to give that opportunity.
But is George Pickens that type of receiver? I mean, I think he's more of a deep threat, more of the over the top, take you over the top kind of guy. The Martavius Bryant, he's not an Antonio Brown type. Route running isn't there. I mean, can he get there? Maybe. I think he has extremely great hands, but I just don't know if he's that piece that's going to fit what you need out of wide receiver number 1. I mean, Deontay Johnson can just be more reliable and catch the ball and more routine, especially in those weighty moments. I think he would be a wide receiver 1. He would be something close to what we had in Antonio Brown, because his ability to get open, even when he's double covered or whatever the case may be, is there. It's the intangibles that he doesn't have. It's the getting the toes down in the corner, inbounds that Antonio Brown was able to toe tap. It's the ability to catch routine passes during weighty moments that Antonio Brown was able to do. Now, I know he's not Antonio Brown. However, he could be a Santonio Holmes type of player if he could maintain those things and be a little bit more consistent when it comes down to those, those moments where those drive extending moments. I mean, there was many a times last season where a lot of people were saying, man, he doesn't have that many drops. The percentage is down, this, that, and the third. And I get it. It was, but there was a little bit of context that went into it. There was moments where, the Steelers needed to continue drives and he either dropped the ball or ran backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And those things ended up not happening. And so in my opinion, I think that there's that possibility there. And I don't know. I don't know if it's Jordan Addison. I think that the only wide receiver that I would take is Jackson Smith. Jackson Smith.
There you go.
I think
you're getting there. You'll get there.
Yeah. If he ends up being a Steeler, I'll definitely have it. But, if he ends up being the guy, I would be excited about it. I don't think they're going that direction. I don't think there's a lot of, they've been able to turn second round, third round wide receivers into some great talent out there. And so I don't think that they need to necessarily go that direction in the first round unless somebody comes in with some kind of offer for DJ. If somebody comes in with an offer for DJ, that's the way I would do it.
If it's an offer, you can't. That's completely different. I don't see that happening. Now I understand your point and stuff like that. What was I going to say? I don't see any wide receiver in the first round being that can't miss wide receiver like Jamar Chase was.
Right.
So that's why I'm going to pass on wide receiver in round one. Now, it's not to say those guys can't turn into good players in this league. In the sense of what the Steelers' direction needs to go, that's why you pass on wide receiver there. You don't need that right now. See what happens with year two, with Kenny Pickett having a full-on entire thing with Deontay and Pickens, and you might see where Deontay has a bounce back and Deontay can look back to being that guy that he looked like the other year, right? George Pickens can take that leap and maybe be that receiver that he has the ceiling to be. You don't need to go out and reach for one of these wide receivers that aren't in that category. Right. So that's just my opinion. Let's see here. Yeah, you're right. I think I'm better than any wide receiver in the draft, whatever that means. How's that flag football game, Z? That's gotten canceled last 3 weeks. Afton says, what's going to happen with quarterback 3? Does Mason stay? Do they get an undrafted free agent? I think, they can maybe draft one in the 7th round to be another arm or look into free agency. There's a reason Mason Rudolph hasn't gotten any interest from any team around the league. There's exactly a reason. Like, there's even teams around the league that can probably use a backup quarterback. He still hasn't been signed.
There's been some rumors that he's being tied to a couple of teams in the NFC. But I think they're going to wait till after the draft before those things.
Well, they might. Happening. Like, I think he'll land on a team, but it's the way nobody views him as a guy as, oh man, we gotta get in touch with Mason Rudolph. So, like, it's just how it is. Like, nobody really has.
I'll say I think I prefer Mason over Mitch Trubisky at $10 million a year.
Yeah, I don't think Mason's a bad backup, but Rudolph couldn't beat Detroit. I was at that game, unfortunately. Let's see, there's another thing there. Where was it?
So with the tight end class, if the Steelers were to go tight end, which tight end do you think they'd go, and where do you see them picking up a tight end?
Well, if they want one of these tight ends, I don't see all 3 going in the first round. But honestly, I think all 3 of them are going to be gone by the early 2nd round. I don't think they even have a chance with these to take one. And I'm saying specifically the top 3. What I mean by they don't have a chance is I don't see them taking one at 32, and I don't think they last till 49. Just my opinion. I think there's a completely different direction. The other tight ends, if they want to take one, maybe somewhere in the middle of the draft. That's just my kind of thought process on that. Could they take one at 32 if they want someone? Sure. But again, I think that there's more opportunity elsewhere than taking a tight end right now with the 32nd pick, if that's what they decide to do. But yeah, I think two of them are going to go in the first round. I do. I think the other one will go right in the early 2nd round.
Gotcha. Yeah. See, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if Darnell Washington is there at 32, I wouldn't be surprised if they went that direction. Main reason being is they really don't have a blocking tight end. And that he's a big, large man that can block. And, Pat Freiermuth, that was probably one of his weaker parts of his game. Zach Gentry, he's okay at it, but he's not the best. Connor Hayward, he's a little bit undersized for getting up there against some of those bigger, outside linebackers and defensive linemen. And so, I wouldn't be surprised if they went that direction. I would be surprised if there's other pieces on the board and they still went that direction. Like, for instance, if they get to that point, they get a tackle and let's just say somebody falls, as a cornerback. Maybe there's a chance there, but I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen. But if it does happen, I think that Darnell Washington might be the guy that they go there. The Here We Go show has a question for us. He says, what would you consider appropriate draft compensation to trade Deontay and incur the $19 million in dead cap for moving him? So trading him and having to pay his entire amount, then that's going to be a pretty hefty cost, as far as draft capital comes. I'm thinking that I wouldn't take nothing less than a second. What are you thinking?
I just wouldn't trade him at all. I never really understood the narrative of trading the guy. I think he's gotten better each year. Last year he had a down year for sure. But in terms of trading him, all right, then it's going to have to be a good price because you're losing a guy that's a productive wide receiver. So I wouldn't even want to take a second round pick for a guy like that and then having to pay the whole entire salary.
Right.
So I think it would be, hey, first round pick or nothing then. But see, I don't think you need to take a blocking tight end with the 32nd pick. That's still technically a first round pick. Mm-hmm. If you want a blocking tight end, there's guys out there that do a good job in that category that you can bring in. Mm-hmm. To me, I think there's so much more value at that pick than taking a tight end specifically to play behind Pat Freiermuth, who's transcending into a top 5 tight end in the league. You see my point of view on that. Now, if let's say they would take Darnell Washington at 32, okay, we'll see how they use him. I mean, he's a big guy. He's a big guy. He can do a couple different type of things. I think he's going to be the second tight end taken, but I don't think at pick 32 that's really a first round pick at the end of the day. I don't think you need to take another tight end to put behind Pat Freiermuth, especially when Darnell Washington is much better than just blocking. That's just my view on it. That's why I think that if you want specifically a blocking type tight end, go bring in a guy like you remember David Johnson?
Right.
You remember David Johnson? There's so many guys out there that you can bring in specifically to block for you in tight end than drafting one. But that's just me. I'm not going to be mad or anything like that if they take a tight end the second round, if they think that he can add to the offense. But that's just my opinion.
The angle that I see that possibly you'd go with Darnell Washington at 32 is his possible, is the running, the blocking aspect, but also the red zone aspect. That was probably one of the weakest points of the Pittsburgh Steelers offense last season. Yeah. It was getting into the end zone. And when you have a guy like, for instance, Darnell Washington, you can go heavy. You can go Darnell Washington, Pat Freiermuth. You can have Najee Harris spread out. And then you go with George Pickens and an Allen Robinson out there. You have guys that are 6 foot and above out there. People are going to, let's pick your poison. You go out there with bigs to cover them all, and then you spread them out. They go out there with little guys to try to, defend the pass. Then you go in a big, heavy formation and run it down their throat. And so I think it does give you a little bit more options and your ability to utilize and maybe be a little bit more successful in the red zone, because that's been the part that I think that the Steelers offense has struggled mightily. Throughout the course of last year, they went in phases. They sucked completely in the beginning of the year. They couldn't it was 3-and-out city. And then they started to get an identity with the running game as Najee Harris got healthy and as the offensive line started to gel. Then the passing game did start to kind of come into play, and they were able to move the ball between the 20s, but it was getting into the end zone. That was the Achilles heel for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so I think that when you bring in a guy like Darnell Washington, that will give you that ability. And, I know that there's a lot of people that are looking at the defensive side and saying, no, we need to draft defense. And I agree. There's some positions that need to be addressed there. You have your outside linebacker position who, you have Alex Highsmith going into his last year of his contract. Who knows if he's going to be here after that? And there's no depth behind him. We have Quincy Roche, Jameer Jones got cut. I don't know how much of a impact we were hoping from him.
Yeah, I don't know either.
There was rumors that the Steelers were trying to get back Bud Dupree. It ended up not working out, and he signed with Atlanta. And so there are some holes there on the defensive side. The cornerback position, in my opinion, is okay. I mean, when you look at the defensive backs of the Pittsburgh Steelers, this was still a team that had the most interceptions last year. Now, with a loss in Cam Sutton, they gained in Patrick Peterson. Do you think there's a huge drop off there between those two?
Between Cam Sutton and Pat Pete, I'm not going to say I think that there's a drop off. They're two different players. And I know. I don't know what he means. Ask Waffles. Did you get off early, Z, or what? But I don't think it's a drop off. A lot of people were upset, myself including. It was kind of disappointing they didn't bring back Cameron Sutton. But Pat Pete's a guy. He doesn't. We know that of course, being going on 33, you're not going to have the speed that you once had. But he's still a guy that can still make game-changing plays on the defense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think probably most people would say if you had an option right now, if you're the Steelers, would you rather have Cam Sutton, Pat Pete? I think probably most would go toward Cameron Sutton, myself included. But Patrick Peterson, I don't think it's really a big drop-off really at all because we'll see really how they use him. If they want to use him a little bit in the back, a little bit at safety, a little bit at certain moments. But he's still a guy that will make the plays that an all-pro future Hall of Famer is going to make. Mm-hmm. And having a guy like that on that type of defense, especially with a team that's more younger still. And I know the Steelers in terms of average defensive age isn't in terms of the highest of the league, but that's why him being 33 has no concern for me. I don't care how old you are. If you're making plays, if you're playing at a good level, if you can bring a difference to your team, sign me up. I'm taking you on my team. Don't care.
Yeah.
I think the age when it comes to players is such an overrated thing to talk about because there's so many times over the years that I've watched football for that guys are 33, 34, 35, 36, and they're still playing pretty damn well.
Mm-hmm.
So I have zero concern about Patrick Peterson when it comes to a drop-off in terms of cornerback play or anything like that. Again, would I love to have Cameron Sutton back? Sure. I absolutely wish we were able to keep him. But I'm excited for what Patrick Peterson's going to bring to this defense. And the fact that this guy he made game-changing plays for Minnesota last year. He was one of the higher-ranked cornerbacks last year. I don't think it's much of a drop-off at all.
Yeah, so neither do I. And so when I look at that aspect and I look at the fact that the Steelers they got the most interceptions last season, the next question or the question is, what are the holes? And I think the Steelers addressed those holes, and that was the heart of the defense, the middle linebacker position. It was so bad, the Steelers completely overhauled it. Gone is Devin Bush, gone is Miles Jack, gone is Jerry O, the coach for the middle linebacker group. So complete overhaul.
Spillane, see ya.
Spillane is gone. These are guys that took important and tremendous amount of snaps last year in that position. So they've completely overhauled it. They got two new guys in Holcomb and Robertson. I can't remember his last name there. Roberts. Yeah, there's a lot of them, man. But everybody, I do have dyslexia, so sometimes I get some things backwards quite a bit.
Same thing at the end of the day.
Yeah, and so you have these two new players, a player that that Coach Tomlin had recently talked about in his press conference in Robertson. I think that was the biggest hole. Now, Terrell Edmonds is gone. So there is a bit of a hole there in the safety position, but I don't think that's a position that you need to acquire or attend in the first round.
Not at all.
And so for me, then comes back to, all right, if the defense has these positions and you have question in depth, right? When it comes to the defensive side, you have the third outside linebacker, you have another safety coming in to pair up with DeMonte Casey and Minka Fitzpatrick. that is depth. You have Patrick Peterson, you have Levi Wallace that can be formidable CB1, CB2. And then when you have a healthy TJ Watt, that helps out the passing game or the defensive passing game tremendously. So in my opinion, you have that there. I think that if you're going to make a move on the defensive side and with the first pick, it's got to be corner. It's got to be defensive line. If a Jalen Carter falls a little bit and you're able to go up there and get him, and you have somebody there that can be the next Cam Hayward whenever he does decide to hang up the cleats, which, he's up there in age as well. I don't know how many years he has left in the tank, but perhaps maybe the Steelers can extend that tank if they don't have to put that many miles on him, and they can put him in situational football and utilize somebody that is like a generational talent, like a Jalen Carter. I don't know if the Steelers are willing to do that. Would you be willing to give up the 32nd pick to move up into the top 10 if he's available? Jalen Carter, that is.
So would I keep my 17th pick?
No.
So I'd have to give up the 17th and the 32nd pick?
Yeah.
No, definitely not. No, I think Jalen Carter, I don't think is quite as good as what everybody makes him out to be. I think he's good. I think he can be a really good defensive lineman in the league. But I don't think he's worth trading to my first-round picks to move up at – because 32nd is still a first-round pick. Miami just freaking forfeited their pick because they're stupid. So 32nd is still really a first-round pick. So I'm not trading to my first-round picks to move up and get a guy that people are starting to sour on. And he's been through crap too, and hopefully he can really kind of get things going. But there's still concern there. There's still concern over there from his pro day. There's still concern over there with his weight. How mentally invested is he in right now and with football? And I think that you can get a productive defensive lineman at pick 49. Absolutely, I do. So I wouldn't. Now let's say they would. I don't think Jalen Carter is going to fall in the top 10, but let's say for some reason they would. I would still love it. I still think that if you're wanting to play, I think, and if he's all in, I think that he can be a difference maker to the defense. Absolutely. I think if he's healthy and he's on track and doing his thing, I think he can be a really good NFL player. But trading my second pick, I'm not doing it. I think there's so much more value there. I really do.
I can see your point. I think that he's probably one of the few guys that could be a generational talent, though. And I think that if that's the guy, and it doesn't matter who it is, if it's him, if it's Christian Gonzalez, if it's, one of these tackles, Broderick Jones,
Joey Porter.
I'm not as.
I think he's going to fall a little bit. I do
too. I'm not as high on Joey Porter.
Hey, if he's there at 32, do you take him?
At 32, I would.
Yeah.
I would at
and
32.
I like him. I do. Now, like what we've talked about, he doesn't meet necessarily the criteria the Steelers have kind of been aiming at this offseason with making the splash plays, the turnovers. But he's a guy that's got speed. He's a guy that's really good with his hands. He's good in man coverage. And we obviously know the ties, blah, blah, blah. But I think if he's there at 17, I still don't think they're going to take him.
Yeah, I would be. Unless everything just fell apart, all the tackles are off the board, all the cornerbacks are off the board, then maybe, you know. But if that ends up being the case, you're going to have some players that you wouldn't expect to fall. Maybe perhaps somebody like a if it ends up going that direction, you might end up with. Man, if it ends up going that direction, I think maybe you do pick him. But
let's see here. Afton says, "Do you think Sidney Brown from Illinois goes late enough? He could be a potential pick." So Sidney Brown is a safety from Illinois. If you don't know who he is, Afton, you seem pretty knowledgeable with college football. Now he's probably going to go somewhere in the middle of rounds. Hey, if they want to take a safety in like the 3rd or 4th round. And maybe be somebody who probably won't make quite an impact this year, but in terms of longer term, then yeah, I think that's definitely possible. Z says that he would 100% trade up if he's a Steelers. I think the only way they trade up, Z, is if they want Paris Johnson, the tackle. I really do. I don't see anybody else that they would trade up for. So, are you home? I mean, you never even answered the question. Are you at your house? Did you get off early or what?
I believe he's talking to his waffles.
Yeah, he's talking to his waffles. Just stare at him, talking to him. He's got nobody else to talk to. That's why.
He was asking him if Lamar Jackson's coming back.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Well, regardless, nobody's afraid if he comes back or not, so nobody's scared of that. Your wife says she knows a spot that's not healthy. What's she talking about there?
I think she's talking about food. She's always talking about food. My wife is
she's Steelers fan. You see her in the chat. She's Steelers fan.
She's always
hopefully you're feeling
food.
Okay.
Yeah, we've had some. For those that don't know, we're expecting our first baby together, and her first baby, and she's been having some contractions lately, so it can happen almost at any moment. So I'm having my ear to the door.
It could happen on the show.
In case.
It could happen on the show at some point.
Yeah, I'll live stream it too. So make sure you hit that live
live
and subscribe. You'll see me catching the ball, catching a baby. I won't wear a Deontay Johnson jersey though. I'm catching that.
Yeah. You don't want to drop it.
I'll go get a George Pickens. Yeah, it's we're having a little girl. I'll wear a George Pickens jersey. Make sure that I catch that.
Yeah, make sure you catch the baby out of there. I mean, that would be an all-time moment, Daniel. It really would.
I'd be freaking out, dude, if it ended up having to come down to me catching it. I'm already freaking out. We went to the doctor not too long ago, and she was saying, the contractions are happening, this, that, and the third. And the doctor's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I just want to make sure that if this baby comes, that it's not me trying to catch her." Thank you for the congratulations. Yeah, in fact, that's the reason why, if you guys watch the Steel Curtain Network, I am the newest host for The Hangover that airs out on Mondays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central Time. And unfortunately, I couldn't make it yesterday because the contractions were getting kind of close. And so we ended up having to take a trip out there and get there. And just to be told, no, not yet, which is the second time. It's the second time that happened. But it's the thing is that we kind of have to go. Because the baby is not facing the right way. She's butt down. And so at this point, it'd have to be a C-section if she were to go into full-blown labor. And so we don't have the luxury of waiting a while to see if it's full-blown labor. We have to go check it out, because if it is, then it becomes an emergency C-section right away. They're trying to hold her off for the next 2 weeks. So,
well, as I told Daniel for the show, that regardless what time frame, it's all going to work out. So we're excited for both of you. We really are.
And thank you guys, and thank you all of you guys for the congratulations and the thoughts. We appreciate it. We truly do. And I'm hoping not.
Yeah, draft day. Daniel misses the draft. That's worst case scenario.
That would be worst case scenario. I'm really hoping that's not the case. My father-in-law thinks that's going to be the situation. He's already trying to jinx me, and so it is what it is. But we are getting a little bit long in the tooth here. Do you have any final words for everybody before we let everybody go? And are you going to be going live for the draft on Thursday?
Right. So, everybody, shout out to you all tuning into the chat. We thank you guys for tuning into the Daniel and mine's pre-draft show here on the Unofficial Steelers podcast. So we appreciate all your guys' comments, your thoughts, your questions, and everything of that nature. You all should be excited for the draft and seeing what's all going to happen. There's gonna be a lot of things to talk about. But yeah, I just love, as I stated earlier, I love that the whole entire draft, not just for the Steelers, I think the entire draft is unpredictable. And I think that's fine. That's what makes it so fun. And these recent drafts have been not all predictable, but for the Steelers in the last few years, the picks have kind of been predictable. We have really, nobody knows what direction they're going to go. And I think really just all around, like in terms of who everybody's going to go, where everybody's going to go, you look at the quarterbacks, there's really no clear cut first overall pick right now. So that's exciting. Z says the Barbarians, this flag football team, is going to be raising a banner this season. Well, how about you tell Eric to let you guys play a game? Or else that's not going to be happening. But yeah, guys, so that's really my excitement for the draft all around. Aquatic, we appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for that. Come back into the show when we go live next time, man. We'll probably be live. We go live either Tuesdays or Saturdays. We've been only doing Tuesdays and Saturday, either Tuesday or Saturday as of late, just because it's the off season and stuff like that. And so then once training camp and the things and, the season starts approaching, we'll kind of get back to our 2 days a week live, but it's either Tuesday or Saturday. So just kind of keep up with our channels. That goes back and forth on when we're going live. Same goes for everybody in chat because we love to see you guys there. So, but yeah, you guys can follow me, my main channel at In Hindsight. Love to talk about a whole bunch of different things, whether it's Pittsburgh sports, Steelers, Pirates, Penguins. This podcast is on that channel as well, or talking other sports, NBA playoffs, whatever it may be, anything like that. So you guys can do that. So, Daniel, what about you? Is there anything you want to leave us here?
So I will be going live the night of the draft. I
forgot to answer that. I will not be going live, everybody. I forgot to answer that. Will not be going live. Daniel will be going live. He will be going live in the hospital, ladies and gentlemen.
If need be. The guys at the Steel Curtain Network told me that if the baby comes on draft day, I have to name the baby after the draft pick. It would be our luck that it would be Jackson Smith Njigba if that ended up being the case. I told them, the wife already turned that down.
How would you feel if we took Broderick Jones? You had to name your child Broderick.
Well, she would probably be picked on quite a bit. She would, I don't know if there's very many names out there that she would, maybe Paris. I think she would like Paris.
Paris is interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah, Paris Johnson.
That's a good name. Jackson, I've heard that for girls' names.
That's true.
What about if they drafted Peter Skronsky? What if you named her Peter?
Oh man, I'd have to be Skronsky.
I know which one's worse. I have no idea.
True story, man. But yeah, I'll be going live tonight. I'll probably hit the live button as soon as if they end up trading up, as soon as they trade up, I'm hitting the live button. If not, I'll be going live when Washington pick is up. That way you guys can see my reaction. I wanted to do that last year, but I ended up going to the draft party. It probably would not have been the best reaction that people would have liked, because I'll be honest, I was saying not Kenny Pickett when it was going down.
Here you are representing him, man. Here you are representing him.
Hey, he's done some good things. He turned the season around last year, going 7-2 at the end, and now, possibly getting some help up front. Give him a little bit more time, make the offense a little bit more imaginable. And if he takes that huge step in that second year, we could be looking at a possible, franchise QB handoff to franchise QB. And I'm sure the rest of the division would hate it, and I would love it. But
absolutely. So that's the hope.
We might be back on Saturday, just because of the fact that that'll be the towards the end of the draft, and we can kind of talk about the draft picks. If not, we'll definitely be back on Tuesday.
Yeah. So we want to.
Yeah, for sure. So with that said, please hit that like, subscribe, go check out Nathan in Hindsight if you're not already there. Make sure you subscribe to his channel so that way you don't miss any of the Unofficial Steelers podcast. That being said, we're out of here. Peace.